beautiful Lovetarians. Are you interested in how divine energies can help you claim your sovereignty and really transcend all fears? If you are, this is a podcast for you. And I have an amazing guest with me today, powerhouse, incredible goddess, Rebecca Saxon. And she is transpersonal, mouthful, psychologist, and she has incredible, decades of experience in dealing with those issues. Rebecca.
Yes, hello. Hello.
Yes, could you tell our viewers a little bit about your background, how it all began? Let's keep in mind we have 55 minutes only, so.
I gotcha. Okay. Well, I think it's important. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. So I am interested in sovereignty because I did not have it for most of my life. I was very much a people pleaser as a result of trauma in my family. And just like many of us, we all grew up in this world, in the world, being indoctrinated by all these ideas and really wanting to fit in with our families, fit in with society. And I'm a highly sensitive person. I'm, some call it an empath. And many who watch this probably also can relate to that. And I basically started on a spiritual journey at about age 17 when I entered Overeaters Anonymous for an eating disorder. And I had an awakening in nature where I felt one with everything. And I'm in my 50s now, and my whole life has just been dedicated to coming to know what's true so that I could feel good inside of myself. And so I work with primarily women now to help with this split, right? Because when we're anxious and we're afraid, it's because there's a sense of being split inside of ourselves. This is what I'll talk more about that. But I spent my whole life like a chameleon, wearing a mask, right? Wearing a mask, being what I thought people wanted me to be. And really, as young children, and especially when you have trauma, you end up turning away from really important parts of yourself.
Yes.
Right? So I just wanted to know what was true. I wanted to know who I was. And it was a long spiritual path. The other thing I'll mention is that I was the Integrative Wellness Expert at Miraval for a couple of years. And I learned so much when I was there. I mostly talked about the mind-body connection and spirit, because I myself suffered from chronic fatigue syndrome when I was working on my master's degree. And I went to Stanford University and no one could help me. They literally said, I was only 31 or something. And they were like, we can do nothing for you. You have to wait it out. And so that was the beginning of my I'm also a holistic RN. So I did hospice nursing and I did a lot of nursing where I was of service from the heart and of the spirit. And once I became a holistic RN, my whole life changed. And eventually I started doing that kind of coaching. And when I was at Miraval, I started working with women, and I could see women in their 40s in particular, and 50s, even late 30s. I mean, there was just this sense of desperation around, and this is true with myself and my clients now as well. And this is when I started seeing it was at Miraval, is that no matter how much we arrange the chess pieces outside of ourselves, no matter how much we move, that was my thing. I used to move all the time. No matter what we do outside of ourselves, there still tends to be this inner angst. And I had that my whole life. I had depression, I had anxiety, and a lot of things I did with my holistic health did change it. And it's really important that we do mind, body, spirit. But I will say that, and I'll share more about this when you ask me about it, but ultimately what I really came to recognize was and why I wanted to talk about fear right now is because of what's going on the planet.
Oh, yeah. A lot.
A lot. And it's bringing up, it's like the whole energy on the planet is happening inside of each of us. And this is the time to remember who we are. We can no longer afford to keep looking outside, right? So my work that I do, you didn't mention this, I'm a divine feminine sovereignty coach, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I work with divine feminine energy, which is sorely lacking on the planet,
Yeah.
to help us remember who we are and come back into union. And I'm
Well,
also going to talk about the divine masculine too, because the divine masculine is what grounds the divine feminine. And these are the two keys for dealing with fear and anxiety.
beautiful. I know you've been talking a lot because your voice is kind of telling us that you have
It's my
like to get
morning
some
voice.
water.
It's early here. It's my morning voice. I have my coffee, so it'll get better.
Yeah, no, thank you, thank you. Thank you for that. No, so much is happening. And this is, you said it so beautifully. It is so, so very important to balance both energies, and masculine energy, or rather wounded masculinity, have been creating havoc in this world for thousands of years. But on the other hand, the beautiful healed masculine energy, that's a totally different story. So can you explain a little bit about those two polarities and why when they become one, it is such a beautiful process?
Oh, I would love to. Wow. I've really been deepening my own relationship with fear myself the last year. New levels, right? Because we're always deepening. And what I saw was the deeper that I worked with the feminine energy, right? So I'm going to just back up a little and say the feminine energy is the part of us that we need when, in the beginning of this work, this sovereignty work that I do, we learn to get present. We learn to go inside. We start discovering, and we find there's a lot of pain inside. There's wounds, there's our inner child. This is where we need to call in and develop the divine feminine energy to nurture and love those wounded aspects that we personally, in order to fit in, we needed to abandon those parts of ourselves, or we just couldn't allow that. So for example, I grew up with a mom who was this radical woman's liber, and anytime I brought tender feelings into the room, I would be shamed. So I learned that my sensitivity and my tenderness was really not okay. And that's an example of the wounded masculine in the world, right? It's the idea that for a woman to feel equal to a man, I hate to say this, but it's like we have to take on all those characteristics. And unfortunately, many of the masculine characteristics that we're seeing have to do with power over, as opposed to sort of an inner strength and power. And so when we begin to do the inner healing around the divine child inside, the wounded child, we notice that we could really get lost in a lot of emotionalness, a lot of emotion, a lot of tenderness. We can get really lost in that nurturing energy. And this is where the divine masculine comes in. So the wounded masculine is about power over. It's about force. If you've read David Hawkins' book, Power versus Force, which is really getting popular again right now, thank goodness. And it talks all about energy and how we're energetic beings. Anyway, so we want to come back to inner power and discernment of the mind. That's the healthy masculine energy. And I'll break that down in a minute when it comes to, for everyone to understand, when it comes to anxiety and fear, how do these two pieces play out? So in the world, in this 3D consciousness that we're in, and we're slowly moving out of, those of us that are claiming that and we're doing that, has been about restriction. It's been creating the wounded feminine, which is about victimization. The wounded feminine and masculine have been doing this dance that's kept everyone unhappy and unfulfilled, looking in all the wrong places, thinking that if you had power in the world, I have a handful of very successful and accomplished clients, two who work in, TV and film and all that, and they talk about that feeling of emptiness. You can get an award, You can be the top of your game and there's still this inner sense of emptiness, right? And that's what many of us are walking around with as a result of the wounded masculine, which says it is better to look good than to feel good, like that. There's a joke about that, but it's true. Like, we've been told, wear that mask, show people that everything's okay, even if you're crying yourself to sleep every night. And that has to stop.
How do we stop it?
So that's obviously a big question, but that's what I want to kind of address, right? So I said earlier that the sense of being split inside of ourselves is, I think, what causes most suffering. And essentially, the work that I do in my sovereignty coaching is reconciling the two parts of ourselves. The third dimensional human part that we agreed to embody and to experience, and the divine part of us, right? Because you spoke about, the title of this is The Divine Energies to Liberate Ourselves from Fear and Claim Our Sovereignty. And I always, when I'm working with clients, I'll always, whenever stuff comes up, it's really important, because as long as we're here, there is an appearance of duality. And I always say, you've got the human side of things and you've got your divine aspect. And the work that needs to be done is to begin to blend these two so that we are both divine and human. And some might say that's the ascension process, So the first step, excuse me, I'm going to speak about this. So my one-on-one coaching program includes walking through 4 gateways towards sovereignty, these divine feminine gateways. And the first one is presence. And I'm going to weave this in with some specific steps.
Perfect.
If we don't slow down and turn inside, we will continue to believe the stories and the messages that we've gotten since we were born that are very limited. Okay. So as a result of those false beliefs, there's a lot of different names for it. In the 4 agreements, it's spoken of as, that indoctrination that we get, and that runs us. So we need to slow down and see what's happening in our minds and in our bodies. We need to drop into the body and become deeply present in the body. And then from there, we get curious. And that's when we bring in the second gateway. And there's much more to each of these, of course, but that's the first step. Then we bring in the love. That's that feminine energy, the unconditional love for whatever we find. And there's a reason that people don't like to slow down. I myself, I've lived like all over the country. I moved. That was my strategy. That was my inner wounded self strategy for not feeling at a deep level. And we all have different strategies. My eating disorder and addiction, any form of addiction, is a strategy to not feel that pain, right? And so we need to just go and be there. And so as we bring in the love, the second gateway, that's really learning how to have unconditional love for ourselves. It's a practice. And it's not just about taking baths and everything. Yeah.
I'm going to ask, because I still have it also with my clients or during workshops. So many women especially find it so difficult to forgive themselves for and loving themselves. It's a nice intellectual concept, but to embody that, it is so tough for them.
Yeah.
How would you encourage people how would you ease it for them?
Well, there's so many. I was about to say yes, it's making sure you get massage, it's taking your baths at night and all that, but it's a more global thing. It's basically saying yes to yourself. And we have to always every Western woman needs to walk through codependency. They need to see where they are saying yes when they mean no inside. I mean, it's a multi-layered thing. There's not one thing you do to love yourself. It's a decision. I would say that it's a choice. It's a choice that you have to, because that's sort of the pivoting aspect of all of this that I was say, is that when you go in and start to love yourself, then you start to hear yourself, then you hear your intuition. And as you hear your intuition, you start to call in the masculine energy to become a master in balancing the pain. Because if we're going from 3D to 4D right now, that's happening inside of us. So you might have a really high vibrational day and lay down at night, out will come this wound, or you'll just be doing something and you'll get triggered. You'll go from 0 to 10, I call that. That means your inner child has a wound coming up. And how do we love that wound and still remember who we are? That's the choice. I think that if there's one thing that anyone could take from this whole talk, it's that we are not victims, but we have to choose for ourselves. And I've met a lot of women will start coaching and they'll say, yeah, they want to do it, but they're much more interested in keeping everything the same. And you can't. That's the choice. That's self-love. Self-love is being a little bit of a warrior at times. Self-love is being willing to walk away from blowing up at your husband again because he's not doing the dishes the way you want. It's a literal day-to-day practice, which is why the coaching really needs to be a consistent, container. And I use that example because so many Western women have this issue where they feel like that their partner isn't helping. And it's because they don't let them help. They don't ask, and they feel responsible for everything.
Yeah.
So that's an example, right, of how to love yourself. Like, let yourself off the hook. It's a practice though, because as women, we've been taught, our moms and our moms have taught us, feminine energy gives and gives and gives and gives. So one way to start loving yourself is to stop giving so much. I know that's easier said than done. It is a practice. There's not one thing. It's a multi-layers.
Yeah. Interesting, because in the Lovetarian way, we base the movement on the 4 pillars that I received in my meditations and visions, whatever. And the first one was so clear: to accept 100% responsibility for your life. And when some women hear 100% responsibility, oh my God, I'm responsible for everything in my life. But that's not, it's what you just said. It's not about you responsible for everything around you, the guy, the kids, all of this. My God, it's not about outside of yourself. To accept 100% responsibility for your life, it's to put yourself first.
Yes, and that's masculine energy in a way.
And that's huge, right?
Yeah.
That's huge. And you show by example. You show up at your best, and you don't go for instant gratification, shortcuts, and all of that. That is very short-lived. You might get a super pleasure from drinking half a bottle of wine, but then it's going to be a problem maybe.
Exactly.
Those traps, eh?
Yes, exactly. And I mean, that's why it's multi-layered, and for me, because I'm also an astrologer. Yeah. And I recently just started offering these, which I'm going to be offering at a 20% discount to anyone who's watching this. At any point, you can just email me and tell me you watch this podcast. Anyway, but the whole point is that I'm offering 20% on this thing. It's called a Soul Blueprint astrology coaching session. It's not just an astrology reading. And basically what we look at is, what are the parts that you brought into your life from past lives? What is your karma? What are your inclinations? What's getting in your way that you don't notice because it's right here? It's such a deep part of who you are. And then we look at your dharma, which is the things that your soul agreed to work on when you were incarnating. And I bring this up because when we come back to taking responsibility for our life, looking at this blueprint can be really helpful in saying, oh, that's why that's really easy for me. And I get this inclination. I want to do this other thing. And in my case, I have a Sagittarius South Node, which means I love to talk about big ideas. So I'm trying to learn how to break this down for you guys because I have a Gemini North Node in the 9th house of teaching, of higher mind. I just felt like saying that for anyone who's in astrology.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. Like when I started really diving into that, that's when I started offering that to my clients because I'm like, man, there is a gold mine here. Like, so I want to say that I want every woman that's listening to this to understand that this is all unconscious and we need to make it conscious. I think that's what you mean, right? When you say take 100% responsibility, it just means, and that's fucking, yeah, I just cursed. That's freedom. That's freedom to say, oh my God, I'm not a victim. I get to choose where do I place my attention? Where do I, even inside of myself. So I have this worry, I have this concern that for my business about a photo shoot thing that I'm doing. And I woke up at like 4 a.m. and it was like, rah, rah, rah. I'm giving you an example right now, right? And here comes this fear and it gets in the body. I have a history of PTSD, right? So I'm not saying this is easy. The fear comes in and then I breathe and I simply just say, not right now. That's healthy masculine energy. Mm-hmm. Discriminating in the moment. You guys, this is a moment-to-moment thing. We have to discriminate. All we ever have is the moment. That's why the first gateway is presence. And I just gently turn away from it. You can't fight with fear. As long as you're 3D, fear is going to be in your life because that's a huge part of this planet. And that's, we are from love. I love that you're a Lovetarian because that is who we really are.
Nature. Yes. Real one.
It's the real one. So you've already claimed that in some ways, right? And
now to live it, it's another story.
Absolutely. Well, so last night I was just like, okay, there it is. And I just had to be super gentle with myself and just keep turning back to deep breathing. Oh, I'm so relaxed. What was I just dreaming about? And it might hammer for a while. It's a practice, guys. It doesn't happen right away. But I fell back asleep pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. There have been other times I've had to get up and just journal and cry and listen to the inner critic and listen to all the false beliefs. And that's where the masculine comes in. So,
you know what is coming? Yeah, if I may.
When those false beliefs come, we do have to have discernment and responsibility, as you said, right? So you love, but you also, I think of Archangel Michael just cutting that sword. Yeah. That's masculine energy. Like, no, like when the father comes down and says, no, honey, you're 12 years old. You're not wearing that out and you've got to be home by 8 p.m., or whatever. Like, and we get to say that in our life. And I think a lot of times people think, and women, coming back to women, we learn from our moms who learn from their moms who learn from their moms that you push yourself out of the way and you take care of everyone else. And if we're going to have a fourth dimensional planet and we're going to move into love, we cannot abandon ourselves anymore.
No. Beautiful. Beautiful. Actually, this reminds me, one night, a few months ago, both of us, we are working with the Codex, the Sophia Code. Mm-hmm. And there we're working with the Divine Feminine Ascended Masters. And one night when I was having a big dilemma about something, my inner child was almost throwing a tantrum. And then Mother Mary came through with all her love. And she just told me straight up, very, very beautiful energy. She said, all night for 8 hours when I was sleeping in my consciousness, subconscious, you get to choose. You get to choose. Remember, you get to choose. Woo. And I was so conflicted. And she said, you know what? It's like not many words, but this one sentence was there that no matter what, who is saying what, you get to choose. And that is your power, your choice. So I was like, I don't know if you can see it, like all standing, you know, the hair goosebumps. She was
Me
so powerful. Like you can't see too much light, but it's like a cat. So I want to remind everyone that combination, because you know the feminine, especially not the beautiful feminine, the wounded feminine, it is like the sea of emotion that can sweep us. It's like that tsunami,
Yes.
right? And that masculine sword comes in and said, you get to choose. And that it came to me, this message from Mother Mary, who is
Yeah.
such an embodiment of the beautiful divine, right, feminine. I was like, whoa, all right. And it, you know, it kind of like made me very present. I was like, okay, fine.
Oh,
You
that's
can
so
do cry tantrums, whatever you want, but
I
choose.
love that. I love when that happens, those special moments when they just really give us the download, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that the ascended masters, even though they represent the divine feminine, as we know, because Sophia is the masculine and the feminine, and that's who they really represent. So in order to become a master, we do need that. And I know for me, even in my healing and my spiritual practice for a long time, there was still a lot of codependency. There was still a lot of getting, you know, I call it like you get lost in the emotions. You don't want to get lost in the emotions. You need to, and this is more about the divine masculine. So when we call in who we really are from a spiritual standpoint, we get to bring all this beautiful space.
Yeah, absolutely.
And by bringing that beautiful space in, then we're creating space for the fear to do its thing. Like you said, my inner child was kind of really kicking up a storm. And we just bring in a compassionate love, right? But if we get lost in the inner child, if we get lost in that flood of emotions, like I used to get lost in the fear, you know, and if you find yourself, a lot of my clients will talk about like they just feel anxious and they don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
It's because they haven't made a choice. That's the masculine energy. It's that decision.
Absolutely. House divided against itself, you know?
Cannot stand. And I'm a Libra rising. Coming back to astrology, man, we don't make decisions easily. And that's part of what's going on with like this photo shoot. It's like, do I have it at my house? I want to have it at my house, but is the lighting good? And oh my gosh, like you had a download.
Choose, woman.
What, hon?
I said, choose, woman.
Right. Think about it. Who was that? There's that quote that says, oh my gosh, not Proust. Once you make a
Somebody
decision,
wise.
well, once you make a decision, the whole universe will just align.
Conspires to make it happen. Yeah,
conspires to make it happen. That, to me, that's the masculine energy, right?
But you remember when we discussed this podcast, and you also made that beautiful video in your group, which is called, by the way, what is the group called? Your group?
Divine Feminine Sovereignty.
Divine Feminine Sovereignty. I
That's
presume
my Facebook group. Yes, it's a small, lovely, small kind of intimate group.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and then you made this beautiful video, and we discussed the feminine and masculine energies. And you know, for me, it was instantaneously the similar vision to what I had. That this, in those times where we need to claim our sovereignty, when we need to release ourselves from fear, that masculine, beautiful, healthy, sacred, divine masculine energy, it is so needed, because that ocean has been unleashed of the wounded feminine energy that had been oppressed for thousands of years. And it is so important that we love that energy. At the same time, it is so important, like a child that throws a tantrum, you hug it, and then you just you
tell it the truth. That's the other
step. The truth, exactly. Not in a nasty way, but you say it with wisdom, presence, composure. Tough love, if you will. There's probably a better word than tough love, but it's needed. You need to get present and you need to calm down. Otherwise, you will literally be, you know what? I just see now. You're like, there's this ocean, there's a storm, and you're like that ship without the captain that will just smash on the rocks.
And that literally, yeah. And that happens inside of us, right? That's why, yes. So the work I do, like my specific method is about inner sovereignty. It's not so much about marching in the world, although that's important. But this inner sovereignty, because when we are united inside of ourselves and we're not divided anymore, a house divided inside, right? And speaking of the Sophia code, beautiful Kuan Yin. Kuan Yin has come to me, and Mother Mary, by the way. I've had a lot of health issues, and during my first eye surgeries, I've had a lot of issues with my eyes. I was in a lot of pain. I had detached retinas in both eyes, and I remember coming home from the doctor, and I had a beautiful vision. I just feel really guided to share this right now. It's kind of tender. I had a vision of Kuan Yin, who I was praying with all the ascended masters on my door. And the two men that drove me home, my friends, we could all see it. And we all just kind of stood there because it was this beautiful image of Kuan Yin on the wood in my door. And I went inside, and she was so nourishing to me. Anyway, my whole point is that I've worked closely with her, and in the Sophia Code, it is written that she teaches karuna compassion. Karuna compassion, as Kaya Ross writes about in the book, is about not being divided in yourself anymore, having so much compassion for yourself that you're like, homie, don't play that. Like I used to kind of stomp around sometimes, like, getting your anger back is a big part of this. It's like, you know what? Like I work too. I deserve to receive. And we haven't even talked about, like, when I work with people and anyone that's listening, this whole idea of the new feminine energy is about receiving. It's not about giving. And so we need to make the choice that we're going to start practicing receiving. And it is not easy in the beginning, because most women that I work with and myself are much more comfortable giving. And giving to men, giving to neighbors, giving to pets, giving to children, grown children, to the point that we're absolutely depleted and exhausted.
Yes.
And we're not fulfilled anymore. We're not enjoying our life. So calling back, one of the practices I teach is to sort of come placing one hand on your heart and one hand on your lower belly, and just literally practice leaning back in life instead of always leaning in. And I remember the first time I went to the chiropractor, he told me, it's like, your head is just leaning in. And it's because I was always like, I got to control everything. I got to make everything, a certain way. And part of that's from trauma, right? But we've all had different levels of trauma, like my dad raged, and I felt really scared a lot. My mom was neglectful, but we all have different stories. And that's the other thing about inner sovereignty, is you learn to feel safe inside yourself.
So you talk about 2 gateways, right? And there are 2 more?
Yeah, there's 2 more. So once you start to really cultivate love for yourself, unconditional love, what will naturally arise is this deep wisdom. And it's really connected to the second chakra, or the creatrix area of the belly, the second chakra. This is where the womb space is. In the East, it's called the Hara. I just started doing Tai Chi, like the ancient form of Tai Chi, like the original type. It's not all like pretty and stuff. It's like all about like you got to get down in that lower part of the body, and it's so helpful, because if you're a starseed by any chance, I know I am, speak about being an empath. Many of us here are, we relate to being light workers of some kind. It's really easy to be up, up, up. And that's another thing about feminine energies, about the earth. It's about nature. It's about spirals. It's about flowing. It's not about pushing ourselves anymore. And I have to tell you, the more you lean back and you recognize that I am a light that attracts to me, your whole life changes. Like suddenly you realize that you do have the courage. You'll attract opportunities to you by just practicing feminine energy. Things will totally change. And you'll start to feel like wherever you go, you belong. And not only do you belong, but it like feels pretty good. You don't need to I feel like in some ways I'm getting like more youthful in a way, like it talks about in the Bible, it talks about like being like a child. And our wounded child is actually a diamond child of, when I went to Hawaii with Kyra
Mm-hmm.
back in 2019, and she did a whole healing weekend. And during that time, what was revealed to me was that my child was a dragon child. She was like, rah. And I used to get scared because when I was doing psychology work, I would do inner child work, and sometimes she would roar at me and stuff. And I got scared. I didn't understand that. But my point is that we all, underneath your wounded child, is this incredibly creative, beautiful, playful, wise being. So that's my long way of saying the third gateway is wisdom.
Wisdom.
Wisdom is the third gateway. So, and they, it's a dance again, right? So some clients come in and they're really good at presence, and then they start noticing wisdom. Other clients come in and we have to really focus on that presence piece. And then a lot of wounds come up. Some people don't have as much of the wounding, so it ebbs and flows. But the third gateway is wisdom, and it's tapping into your intuition. It's like, I know what I know. I don't have to look outside of me anymore. I don't have to hire 50 coaches, right? I always need a mentor. I want a safe space to go and explore and grow. And that's why we need a coach, because we really can't do what we came here to do alone. And so I have my mentors, and they help me, and then I'm helping others. And it's this beautiful lineage of all of us learning to know what we know. I mean, can you just imagine how good that would feel? You're at your job. You couldn't decide if you should leave this job. You knew that it was not right, and one day you're just like, I know what I know. Like that other little calling that I have, which the Blueprint Soul astrology session really helps. But you'll start to go, oh, there has been this calling. And when you start to listen to that and you just take steps, oh my gosh, this is my other so important message right now for what's happening in the world. All we ever know when you're in feminine energy, don't think you're going to know exactly how your vision is going to unfold exactly.
Beautiful.
You have to surrender that, because remember, feminine energy is like that womb space. It's like dark, and we need the masculine to say, okay, here's, I'm going to help you take that step. I'm going to help you take that download that you're floating around in, and we're going to put it into form, right? You're going to make chapters for your new book. You're going to, whatever, write, share. You're going to call that agency that keep hearing in your mind that you're not listening to. You're going to take that action. And so that's where the masculine comes in. But feminine energy, oftentimes, especially right now, what's happening in the world, what I often will remind my clients, and I remind myself, is that as we grow and learn, it's almost like we're leaving one shore for another shore, and we're not quite there yet. And that's where we are right now as a planetary species. We are ascending. And it can be so scary to be out there in these waters, swimming from shore to shore. And the dance is, the why I like feminine and masculine, the dance is to love and nurture yourself and your human self, but never forget who you are.
Beautiful. And that will segue into fourth one now.
Yeah.
We are going to talk about all of it.
Thank you for keeping me on track.
I need to. We only have 20 minutes, not even, left.
Okay. The fourth gateway is the embodiment of the divine feminine. And my nickname for this is the self-mastery. I don't always say that, because that if you don't have the first three gateways, you think self-mastery is more of the wounded masculine, and it's not. It's not about controlling yourself. It's not about controlling anything around you ever, right? And but it is, self-mastery has more to do with this deep inner surrender that we do, knowing what we know, staying in the present moment, noticing fear, loving it, dancing with it, still doing whatever we need to do, right? Feeling the wisdom, knowing what I know, making a decision, more love, more presence, more wisdom. And then it's practicing that on a day-to-day basis.
Yep.
24 hours a day. That's embodiment, right? So you're doing your dishes, there's an anxiousness, pause, breathe, get present. Remember your choice. Remember what your choice is for your life and what it is that you want to do. Again, I'm just going to put a plug in for the spirit, for the Blueprint Soul astrology session, because if you have any wavering about what's your dharma and what's your karma, and you want to know what are the ways, because you also get tools in the session. So for example, you will literally, and I record it, so you'll be able to take notes later, but there'll actually be steps for learning, oh, how do I let go of that? And how do I build on this strength that I have? And that's the self-mastery or the embodiment piece, because we need to reconcile the masculine and the feminine. We need to reconcile the human and the divine. And in doing that, it lands in the body and it also goes into the world.
Beautiful. And I want to remind everyone that Rebecca has offered 20% discount on her services. So claim it. If you would mention to her that you watch the podcast, then she will give it to you. We'll get a link, right, to chat with Rebecca to make sure there is alignment between you. And I'm sure she will be of great service.
Well, I just want to clarify. Yes, I'm actually, the 20% is just right now for the single session.
Beautiful.
And a lot of times people just want the single session, and sometimes we'll discover after that they want to do the full inner sovereignty coaching. So
journey of 1,000 miles. It begins with a single step. So just take that one, right?
Yes, exactly.
So would you like to tell us about some of the ways that you helped yourself so that you could help your clients move through this field of fear?
Yes. Well, I feel like I've sort of been speaking about it. Let me just look at my notes here.
Let's wrap it up at the end so they
Yes.
get some specific strategies. Sure.
Okay, so what I wrote.
People like it like, okay, what can I do? Like boom, boom.
Yes, 1, 2, 3. And I actually have these steps written down. So number 1, recognize that you have 2 parts of yourself. You have your third dimensional human personality. You have a persona that you have unconsciously created as a result of your childhood and your family.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's what's operating right now. Until you get conscious, you think you're your persona. So the first step is to make the decision that you want to break free and be free. One of my little slogans, well, happiness is an inside job, and I fly, not free. I mean, fly, not follow. And so you have to make that decision. I want to be free of the mask, and I want to be free of anxiety and fear. Then you need to begin to get really real with yourself about the fact that I am a spiritual being. One has to understand that, and that's where presence comes in. So that's one of the primary things. If you know who you really are, it's so much easier to let go of any victimhood. If in any way you think that you are limited by your body, and that the things in the world have power over you, because we know with quantum physics, 100%, we know with epigenetics, 100%, that what we think is what lands in the body. We know this for a fact. I mean, women who, they've done this with breast cancer people. When you have joy, when you believe that there's something that can change for you, when you can believe you're healthy, when you can believe you're whole, when you can believe you're something greater than the body. So that's sort of the first step, is recognizing we are energetic beings. Even our
Anything is
body.
possible. Anything is possible.
That's right. That's quantum. I mean, that's science, everybody. Quantum mechanics. We live in a field of all possibility, right? So once, and then, but I'm telling you, that's the practice. So then you have that, but then, woo! So let's say you make a declaration, I'm going to do such and such, right? I'm going to align with that. Unfortunately, because we live in a fear-based world and because we have these egoic personalities, they don't want to let go. So they're going to warn you. They're going to wave red flags. That's dangerous. Don't do that. What will people think of you, right? I mean, it's a dance. Expect that's going to happen. There's a reason why there's only so many leaders in the world. There's a reason why only so many people put themselves out there. It's freaking scary. So just make that normal in your life. Go, oh, here comes fear. I'm human.
Feel the fear, do it anyway.
Feel the fear, love it, love yourself. Just be like, all right, so that's number one. Remember who you are. Please love your inner child. That's the next step. And again, these are things that I go into depth with my clients during our, we meet every single week. We meet private. I'm a one-on-one coach. I don't do groups right now. So you need to learn to comfort, validate, and embrace any emotion that you have, okay? Without getting lost in it. And then number three, you not only tell your child, I understand why you feel that way. I feel you, I'm with you. And let that feeling move through your body. It'll keep moving if you don't resist it. That's where presence comes in and breath. Just let it move through. And then once that moves through and your child is kind of calm and has felt the feelings, right? You're aware of those feelings moving. Then you can tell and show. This is a thing a lot of people miss, like some psychology people and stuff. They don't necessarily focus on this. You want to show your child that you love her. You want to show her, Mama's got this. I know when you were growing up, people didn't see you, people didn't take care of it, because the child often thinks it needs to control with all those strategies that you're used to. Like my child would get so anxious, we have to move. It's not a good place here. It's not pretty enough. The people aren't nice enough. That was my thing, right? And I kept moving and moving, and my family would, try to tell me, and it's okay. It's all good. I learned from all of it. But the thing is, there's these strategies, they're going to come up. And so you need to just show your child, I've got you now. We're going to do it a different way. Yeah, but if you do a Facebook Live, no one's going to like you. All those people are going to, what if they did it? And you're like, I got this. Let this adult self come in. This loving adult, right? That we have to develop. A lot of complaints I get, not complaints, but one of the hardest things in the beginning when I'm working with clients is they're like, don't talk to me about that. I don't believe it. This isn't a false belief. It's true. Don't you see? All these things happen. Look at all the negative comments when I do a Facebook Live. Nobody even liked it. I'm just using that as an example if you're in a business or anything. And that's where you can't get lost. That's where the work comes. You've got to create, oh, I'm not that. I'm not the body. That's other people's egos, and other people's egos are always going to come into play. And I get to have healthy boundaries, and I get to celebrate who I am, and other people can do whatever they do, right? But you have to show this to your child, and you tell it to your child, and you have to tell it to yourself, right? Because you are your child. Do you see what I mean? It's like, it's hard work, but it is very possible. Yeah.
We talked about it before we went live. We were like, we are here to play the music of our heart. Lord, use me as an instrument of your, whatever, right? And honestly, play your music through me, and whatever the audience will say, they will say. And I love everyone, and I appreciate that they have opinions. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because I do it. I show up, I go on, I do it. If I were to be addicted to the positive and the negative voices, I would have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
you know?
That's what our persona does. It's why most people don't really put themselves out there. And even me, I'm still learning to be more vulnerable in my shares and to share my own experience. That doesn't come easy. So we're all learning. We all have our own learning curve. But darn, I wanted to say, I want everyone to remember, though, that as you were saying, and I shared with you before we started, I was walking my dog this morning and I was saying, you know, in the 12-step tradition, there's something called the third step prayer that says, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as thou will. Relieve me of the bondage of small self, I say, it's supposed to be self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I could help with thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. And what we're basically saying is, persona, ego, please get out of the way so my divine self can flow through me. And everyone watching this is divine. It's a remembering that, and that's what this process is. You know, when we claim we claim who we are, and then the waves, all those old waves come up, the self-doubt, the unworthiness, and we have to see that for what it is. This is old conditioning, and we just one step at a time, we turn away. I'm choosing good here. I'm choosing the positive. I'm focusing on the good. That's our choice again. But please remember that the divinity is you and wants to flow through you. You know that saying, God doesn't make junk. And so it's just really us convincing ourselves of that day to day, living it, and then loving, you know, and accepting as we continue to strengthen and just unify those parts.
Beautiful. One of my mantras every morning is, let thy will be done, let miracles follow miracles, and wonders follow wonders. And I just jump into it and I trust. And it does take courage. I was afraid to say that, let thy will be done.
Yeah.
You know, I was afraid to say that. But I've been comfortable now with this, especially with the magic and miracles, because they may be what divine finds them miraculous and wonderful. Sometimes the ego might be like, where's the magic in it?
I love that. It's so true. Yes, we don't know what's best for us. Sometimes we really don't. That's why we have to keep surrendering. Surrendering is a huge part of feminine energy.
It is. Rebecca, last 3 minutes. What have we got more to end this up? I believe there's a step or two there.
That was pretty much it. It's the going back and reconciling. But I wanted to say something that you just said. Yeah, I think a good way to end is to really just kind of reinforce that, because as a society, one of the false beliefs we've learned is that we have to control things to be safe.
Yeah.
And if we are truly going to trust the divine, like you just said, right? It is scary to say, thy will be done. And I know for me anyway, my understanding of God, and, you know, my business title, my LLC, is actually called Divine Inner Light. And that's because I believe that the divinity that is God lives in each of us. So when I say thy will, I'm really speaking to my higher self. And I would encourage people who have that same belief that basically we are made in the image and likeness of God, Goddess, and God as you understand God. And that source energy, that's who we're really surrendering to. And that's where the safety comes in. I think that would be the final step, I think, that I didn't mention, is that it's not just your adult self that holds the child. It's God as you understand God that holds all of it. And that's what gives us the safety to say, yes, I surrender, I trust, I have faith. You know, our choice to inject faith. And one of my mantras that I got this was a mantra I used when I attracted the job at Miraval as the Integrative Wellness Expert, which was a huge, great gift in my life to be able to share there. I was saying every day, only good is coming to me now.
Oh, yes.
That comes from Louise Hay.
Yes. My good comes to me from everywhere and everyone. That's mine. From Louise Hay.
I know. She was so amazing, wasn't she? I love her.
Beautiful, Rebecca. Fantastic podcast. Thank you so much. It was really empowering. Let's remind the viewers how they can contact you. So your website is rebeccasaxon.com. Work with Rebecca, or just comment on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, find her on Facebook. We are all over.
Yes, Divine Inner Light is my group. And I also have a profile page that's open to the public. It's just Rebecca Saxon. And I'm friends with Natalia, so you can hopefully find me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just so you know, that link, that actually goes to a description of so normally the cost for my astrology coaching is $222. Okay, it's an hour coaching session that includes looking at everything, including the transits that are really important to you right now. And we're going to give you a lot of tools, and it's recorded. But 20% off of that, I think, is like 170 or something.
Lovely.
So you just need to go there, and then you can send me an email through contact there on my website. Don't sign up there, because if you sign up there, you have to pay the full $222. So just send me an email and say, I was on the podcast, and I will get you an invoice at the 20% off. Okay. So contact me any way you can find me. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca. Everybody, thank you for participating. Those who are watching live, thank you for showing up. Those who are on the replay, thank you as well. Please subscribe, please share it all over. And I want to invite you next week to meet my next guest, Philippa Harvey, who is a practitioner of Chinese traditional medicine. She's also bioresonance specialist. So we will talk about health freedom.
And I just realized I have a small YouTube channel that I just started, and my Instagram are the same. It's Divine Inner Light, one word.
Divine
Inner Light. And that's my YouTube channel. There's only like maybe 10 videos there. It's just getting started. And that's also my Instagram, Divine Inner Light.
Divine Inner Light. And with that Divine Inner Light, we shall go straight into it now. Namaste, everyone, from my heart to yours. Have a fabulous weekend, and we will see you later. Thank you.